All right, Fady, you're becoming a regular here on the show. 2 conferences in a row where we're hanging out. It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Chris. It's always good to be back.
So, and last time we really talked more about manufacturing. We were at the A3 Business Forum, a big automation focus, still an automation focus here, but we've gone a bit beyond manufacturing at this event, despite the show being called Manufacturing Happy Hour. And you know, we really should kick off because I assume not everyone is listening to that. So describe MassRobotics really quickly as if we're having a drink with one another.
Sure. I call MassRobotics a startup escalator, just to differentiate ourselves from the traditional incubators and accelerators. And we believe that incubators and accelerators, they focus on ideation to prototyping. And the real problem for robotics companies is prototyping to production. So we created MassRobotics model to help companies move from a prototyping to a finished product. And the model is really based on 3 pillars, as we discussed last time. So a shared physical infrastructure. We have 40,000 square feet of shared office and lab space in the heart of Boston. Strategic network infrastructure. So those are the corporate partners. So we went out, we built formal relationships with 40 corporate partners, companies like Amazon Robotics, FedEx, Honda, Mitsubishi Electric, Analog Devices, all those amazing companies. And the last piece is the ecosystem infrastructure, which is we share with other incubators and accelerators in terms of programming and events and networking and matchmaking and all of that. Fast forward from 2014 to today, we are leading the New England robotics cluster, 400 robotics companies. We have close to 65 resident startups, 40 corporate partners, and we spun out 7 companies. So 4 got acquired and 3 are continue to grow and scale.
Excellent overview, excellent refresher. If anyone hasn't listened to that episode, definitely go back and check it out. But, you know, I like that you started talking about the ecosystem because that's kind of a big part of the focus today because this morning you were on a panel with Silicon Valley Robotics as well as Pittsburgh Robotics Networks, and you represent Boston, Massachusetts, right? These are 3 of the clusters, the ecosystems, the hubs, whatever you want to call it, right? And I'd love to hear from your perspective, what are the strengths of your cluster, in your opinion?
Yeah. First of all, it's an honor to be representing such a great cluster that I wouldn't claim that, I played a very tiny role in building this cluster, but the cluster existed many years before I come to Boston.
Sure.
So it's a real honor to be representing this amazing cluster and all the leaders there. But I think, while I was at MIT and studied technology strategy and innovation ecosystems from a complex system theory, really, and what it really takes to build an innovation cluster, what are the different stakeholders and how this phenomena happen. And then when you apply that to Boston, it's a very strong ecosystem because not only you have the top-notch research institutions like MIT, Harvard, WPI, Northeastern, UMass, and Tufts, and all those amazing schools that generate lots of IP, technology, and talent, but you also have the entrepreneurship culture and environment. It's not stranger to the Boston ecosystems. You have the risk capital, and we will speak about that, but it's there. There are, strong investment community in Boston.
Yeah.
But I think one key thing that differentiates us in robotics is the fact that we have large-scale successful robotics companies. And this is a huge game changer. Companies like iRobot, Brooks Automation, Kiva, which became Amazon Robotics, and others. So those companies, they graduate alums. Those are not only technologists, but they are executives.
Yeah.
They know how to build a company. You know, many times we mix between building products and building companies.
Great point.
This is a whole skill of how you build a company, you know? So those executives, they understand what does it take to build a company and scale a company. So when they go out and join startups or start their own companies, they basically, they do it in a very effective, very efficient way. One quick example is the founders of Six Rivers. Those are Kiva alums.
Oh, okay. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that's why when you look at Six River, it took them 5 years to exit to be acquired by Shopify,
Yeah.
450 million, 10x return on the money raised.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have seen this scenario before, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is a huge differentiation for us. Obviously, there's also testing sites. There's a lot of components, but in my opinion, and from the kind of the work I did at MIT and the kind of looking at innovation clusters, I think these kind of successful companies play a very key role in making Boston what it is.
Well, that's a great example, right? You got, not only do you have the track record, but I think the thing that stuck out for me there was you don't just have people that understand technology and products. Now they're executives, so they
Yeah.
understand how to run, build, exit successful
Of
businesses.
course.
And you have some other big news on the horizon, right? You've got a new fund. We did not talk about that last time, so I'd love to go into that next.
Yes. So Cybernetix Ventures, we publicly announced the fund today. This is an independent fund. I founded this with Mark Martin, who's a former VP at Analog Devices, very experienced guy with tons of experience in sensors, industrial automation, Fanuc, ABB, Rockwell Automation, Honeywell. All those companies were customers of him, so he's not a stranger to the whole ecosystem, and he brings tons of experience in terms of operation scaling. He acquired companies while at Analog Devices. He invested in companies, so he really complement what I bring to the table in terms of access to the startups and understanding the whole startup kind of cycle and scaling and all of that. So together we launched a fund, and we put together an amazing board of advisors for the fund. You can check their names. That we're very proud of all of them, believing in what we're trying to build, and the key problem we're trying to solve is the challenge for robotics companies to raise funding at the early stage.
Yeah.
So pre-seed, seed, and Series A. This is a very difficult stage to raise funding because you have an idea, maybe you have a prototype.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have market traction.
Sure.
Obviously, you don't have any revenues.
Yeah.
And traditional VCs are not organized to do these kind of bets. We have seen lots of money on the growth stage, A plus, B plus. But the early stage continue to be a mystery for many VCs, how they can make the right bets. Because how would you evaluate a robotics company?
Yeah.
Most VCs have been gravitated towards either pure software investment on one end of the spectrum or biotech at the far end. And robotics is somewhere in between.
Sure.
So it's a whole investment class on its own. And I have been engaged with many VCs over the last 10 years. I have been kind of connecting our startups to VCs, and have been working very closely with startups who want to raise funding. So I have been there, and I have seen how hard is it to raise funding at this point. And it just became obvious that it's hard to change the existing kind of structure of VCs. And there is a need for a new kind of a VC that is designed from the get-go to make these kind of robotics investment. So this is so Cybernetix Ventures is a VC fund from the robotics community by robotics leaders for robotics innovators. So this is kind of like the tagline. This is what we are proud of, and it was amazing just the reaction and the feedback from the VC community, the startup community. Everyone was kind of telling us, "Oh, I mean, it took you too long to kind of come up with this fund. This is something that we definitely need in the industry now." So I'm very excited to have it kind of finally out, and we're very excited about the investment that we have done and the investment that we will do.
Well, I like the way you described that. Hey, you're focused on these areas that traditionally have had more of the investment challenges, right? The earlier stage companies, and I think this ties into our final question here. Like, obviously, you believe in the direction robotics is going, and my wrap up question for pretty much everyone is, hey, what are your predictions for robotics, automation, and AI over the course of the next 3 or so years?
Yeah. It's obviously it's a tough question because I mean no one knows what will happen. But if we think of what has been happening
Mm-hmm.
and the mega trend that has been happening in terms of um, the need to reshore manufacturing to the U.S. and the need to kind of compete internationally and globally, you cannot do this unless you adopt automation and robotics. So obviously there will be continue to be a need for using these technologies to reshore manufacturing. Logistics, warehousing, we have seen the kind of supply chain crisis and I mean, Amazon really changed the whole game
Mm-hmm.
around order fulfillment and supply chains and the reverse supply chains. So I think this is not going anywhere. It will continue to grow. But construction is another area that we believe that there will be a lot of market adoption and market pull,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because of the increased demand for kind of structures and also the declining labor force.
Yeah.
So this is a paradox that you cannot really solve unless you use robotics. So we invested in Airworks and we invested in rugged robotics. Both of them are in the construction space. The fourth kind of dynamics happening is healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been kind of leading and kind of working on a healthcare robotics initiative at MassRobotics, and because of this belief that we will need more and more robotics into the space. There is a disconnect between the healthcare community and the robotics community,
Mm-hmm.
and we have been working on that. We will have an event next week at the Healthcare Robotics Engineering Forum. We will celebrate the conclusion of the Catalyst program that we started last year. So those are the kind of four key verticals that we think that we will see a lot of activities, a lot of market pull. Um, yeah, I'll stop here, but these are some of the ideas that we have.
Hey, you've given us a lot. I'm excited to see how these play out, how everyone's predictions play out, and hopefully we'll have some conclusions at the end of this episode. And Fady, thanks so much for jumping back on the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
Cheers.